Hello, and welcome to this first podcast in the month of October 2025, bringing us to the autumn months and my favorite time of year. I'm so very glad to be at this point in the year, confident we are very close to seeing unprecedented and monumental changes worldwide based on the extensive prophecies God has provided us and our ability to discern the times based on world events. I'm Pam Christian, your researcher, writer, producer, and host of this weekly podcast where I help us explore current events from a biblical and prophetic perspective. These podcasts are pre-recorded, making covering breaking news difficult. However, as unprecedented historical news breaks, such as the Israel and Middle East sovereignty imperative, you can be assured I am following it with plans to address the news as soon as possible. The September 29th meeting of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Trump, along with many other key world leaders, and the announcement of the Board of Peace is very possibly the most historic event for the Middle East ever. I will be researching this to explore with you, especially in light of the warnings God gives His people in the Bible to be on the highest alert in times when the world leaders decry peace, peace. Take a look at Jeremiah 6:14 and 1 Thessalonians 5:3. If you are a regular listener, then you've decided there is sufficient value in what I bring you that it's worth your time to listen again. And for that reason, I'm asking each of you who are regular listeners to share this podcast with as many of your friends and family as possible. I know the information I research and bring you each week is valuable on all kinds of levels, and my recent podcasts have helped you learn about the extensive illegal surveillance our governments are not only currently doing, but are planning to expand in the very near future. As my guest, Twila Brase, helps us understand today with part 2 of my 3-part interview with her, what we've been told is for our medical protection under the HIPAA system is in reality a means to exploit our personal medical information and in so doing violate our freedoms. The next step in taking us on a path for complete control under tracking and tracing is what is called the Real ID here in the United States. And I bet many of you listening from the United States have already gotten the Real ID driver's license with the understanding it provides convenience for you while traveling. Convenience is the smokescreen being used to get us to willingly comply with systems that are leading us to a totalitarian state, not just here in the United States, but all around the world. One of the ways governments have managed to get us to comply is touting convenience. Digital identification and social credit score systems are being marketed as convenient for the general populace, when in reality it's a means for governments to control and ultimately enslave people. In Sweden, thousands of people have had tiny microchips implanted in their hands. Each chip is about the size of a grain of rice and is inserted quickly with a syringe between the thumb and the index finger. The chips act as digital keys, allowing users to unlock doors, board trains, access gyms, and pay for groceries with just a wave of the hand. This technology is designed to replace items like ID cards, credit cards, and keys, simplifying many everyday tasks. Supporters highlight the convenience and the efficiency of the implants. With a single chip, users no longer need to carry multiple items, and the risk of losing them is reduced. Many people have come to view this as a step toward a more seamless, technology-driven lifestyle. At the same time, the technology raises concerns. Critics point to the potential privacy issues, data security risks, and the possibility of hacking. Some worry that widespread use could normalize invasive technology without sufficient safeguards. And in the United Kingdom, great strides are being made in expanding the digital ID scheme. Because of the real problem of crime and safety, the government uses that moniker to sell the people on accepting digital ID. Never mind, it was the globalist-centric government leaders who caused the safety problem through open borders in the first place, only to then solve the problem all while leading the people down a path of digital control. So the people of the United Kingdom are faced with digital controls for government services such as driver's licenses, welfare payments, and tax records, and are now required to have digital identification to be able to work in the United Kingdom. It is said the UK is modeling its system after those used in Australia, Estonia, Denmark, and India. Then there's the precious people in China who have been suffering under invasive track and tracing that the communist government has expanded to a social credit score system. Based on the individual's social credit score, they can or cannot shop, buy groceries, dine out, access their own bank accounts, travel, and much more. This is not an exaggeration, and this is only the early stages of the extent of control governments can digitally impose upon people. Do you want your every move recorded by the government? Have you thought about how this kind of tracking and tracing means the governments decide what medical treatments, including so-called vaccinations, you must have, with their ability to see if you are compliant or not? And the tyrannical police state ability to enforce compliance. This issue is extremely serious, which is why you must share this podcast with as many people as you can without delay. From my podcast analytics, I can see how many downloads there are, in what countries, and even what cities people are listening. And I will tell you, given the seriousness of this topic, there is not nearly enough people benefiting from what I provide. If I charged for what I do, I could see where there might be a hesitancy for you to share or tell your friends and family to listen in, but I don't. Every bit of my work each and every week for over 5 years now has been 100% free to receive, and every bit of my research and podcast presentations provide you with invaluable opportunities to protect yourself and your loved ones from harm. I encourage you to make sure your friends and family are informed about the widespread government overreach, starting with my shows where Mel K was my guest, and then I had programs with Kay Rubacek, and the 3 shows total that I will have now with Twila Brase, who returns as my guest this week and next week. As an ER nurse, Twila learned about the HIPAA requirements, initially being told, as we all were, that the HIPAA system is a means to protect your private medical information. In reality, it's a system that allows all your medical information to be shared with all of your personal details without having to inform you who or where your information is being shared. Twila learning about this led to her also learning about the plans and purposes for what's called the Real ID here in the United States, which we'll discuss in more detail next week. But before I bring Twila back on with part 2 of our conversation about digital ID and so on, I want to be sure you know to get your name on the reservation list for our upcoming tour of Greece in April 2026. We want to get a group of about 30 people signed up because this size group is best for this type tour. And the more people who sign up, the less the trip costs each and every one of us. Some who previously signed up have had to let me know that their plans changed, which means we have more spots available now, and we want to fill these up. So at this point, it's just a matter of putting your name on the reservation list, with final confirmations and deposits being required in the next month or so. I'll share more about this exciting trip a little bit later in the program, but for now, here's part 2 of my interview with Twila Brase. Okay, now I want to get back to something you said. Yes, I personally have signed, I don't know how many HIPAA forms, consent forms, when I go to the doctors. That's my question. Are the HIPAA forms that we sign specific to that visit, or is it a blanket?
No, it's a blanket, because usually they want you to sign it just once a year. Like I said, it doesn't matter. They're just fulfilling a federal requirement that they present the form to you and try their level best. The regulation says make a good faith effort to get them to sign the form. That's what it says, a good faith effort. So they're just fulfilling a federal requirement to present this to you, either if you're a new patient to the practice or once a year.
Okay, now Twila, earlier you spoke about doctors being forced to use the system or they don't get paid. So does this apply to the HIPAA documents that we are also being asked to sign?
No, this is only for the electronic health record, the government certified version that they have to have in their office and they have to use meaningfully. And they will get paid, they just won't get fully paid. But when it comes to HIPAA, the thing that the doctor's offices and the hospitals worry about is that the federal government will come after them and say that they have violated the HIPAA regulation and that therefore they will be fined. But see, you refusing to sign and them not getting your signature is not a violation of HIPAA. And they just don't know it. And so they're afraid because their attorneys have told them that if they don't get you to sign it, they might be charged with a HIPAA violation. The fact of the matter is they could potentially be charged with the HIPAA violation if, when you refuse to sign, they then refuse to write that you refuse to sign, because that's what they are required to do. You are required to do nothing. But there's no money with the HIPAA form. There's just the possibility they think that they would be charged with a HIPAA violation and have to pay thousands or millions of dollars.
Okay, so before we move on to the next topic, which is related to this, just help us wrap this one up. You are advising, this is the Citizens Council for Health and Freedom, which you founded, and you are advising people everywhere not to sign what we call the HIPAA form because it does not protect our privacies whatsoever. It does not do anything to help curb doctors or clinics sharing our information at will. So our not signing the document is making what kind of a protest?
Yes, well, first, it's making a protest. And second, it means that you are not going to propagate the myth, the deception that this form has anything to do with protecting privacy. It's education to the staff. And I think that's why we are having successes around the country. And some of the forms are now being changed because they've realized that, patients are coming in and they're saying no. And so now some of the forms are being changed. But the other reason not to do it is because if you sign it and you said something really confidential, and then you hear just some other staff person talking about Mrs. So-and-so's ex that was so confidential, or for some reason you hear that somebody else other than your doctor or your nurse heard this, then they could take your signed form, essentially, flip it around under your nose and say, well, you signed this. You said that you had read the notice of HIPAA privacy practices. And so you knew that we would share the information because it says all the ways that we're going to share the information without your consent. And so it was your responsibility not to tell us that piece of confidential information because you should have understood that we were likely to share it. So it could come back to be used against you when you complain about having this confidential information shared because you believed it was confidential when it wasn't.
So much of what we say to our doctors and our healthcare providers is confidential, and it should remain confidential. What can we do to protect ourselves?
Well, it's a tough thing out there because when you're a patient, right? Remember, I'm a nurse. When you're a patient, you're vulnerable. You actually have things that are wrong with you. You don't want to die. You don't want to be sick. You don't want your child to die, whatever it is, right? You're vulnerable. And so there are things that you have to say, whether they get shared or not, that you have to say. And so you're in a bad place. And one of the things that we tell people that are on this issue and working on this issue, the reason why people need privacy and they need their privacy rights back, other than it just being right, is that they need to be able to speak freely with their doctors to get the care that they need on a timely basis. The last thing you want a patient to be doing is kind of hedging around the bush, trying to say enough in hopes that the doctor will figure it out without actually exposing themselves. And that's a really bad situation, and it really destroys trust in the exam room and frank conversations that need to happen to get good care.
Absolutely.
You can send a letter and say, I don't want any of my information shared with anyone. HIPAA allows you to do that, but it also allows them to say, sorry, we're going to share it. We disagree with your request, and so we're not going to honor it. Or they could honor it and then a year later or 6 months later, send you a letter and say, we changed our mind, and they have the right to do that under HIPAA. Or you can pick a doctor that isn't going to share it. So you could pick a doctor like in our Wedge of Health Freedom. That's our online directory of cash-based practices. They receive no money from the government, no money from insurance, only cash direct payments. And they don't share it, and they don't have to share it with anybody. And on the Wedge, that's one of the requirements. They have to say that they're not going to share it anywhere. And of course, you can always talk to your doctor if you've got a privacy leaning doctor. You might just say, I want to talk to you about something, but there's no way on God's green earth that I want that, see that in that medical record. Are you agreeable to that? And if he or she says yes, and then you can say, so are you agreeable to sending that scribe out of the room? I don't want the scribe to hear it. I don't want the scribe to write it. So it's just you and me. Are you agreeable? So that's the kind of thing you can do. And of course, you can tell your legislators that you understand that there's no privacy in the exam room anymore because your state acquiesced to HIPAA. And your legislators will be as surprised as you, most of them, that HIPAA does not protect privacy. And the one good thing about HIPAA is it says that if a state has a real medical privacy law, that's the law that has to be followed. Then you are no longer under HIPAA, and they have to get your consent before they share the data.
Okay. And I'm really glad you brought up legislation, because that was my next question, was to ask you if your organization, Citizens Council for Health and Freedom, is aware of legislation that's taking place right now to try to reverse this whole thing, or is there another form that we can sign that better protect ourselves? Because clearly there's going to be some lawsuits coming up about this in the not too distant future.
Well, it's been going on for a long time, and most people don't have any idea that it's going on. There certainly was a lawsuit in Minnesota. The Supreme Court of Minnesota ruled the wrong way, and a legislator, a Democrat, changed our law in Minnesota so that that ruling couldn't even affect the state anymore. So we went back to our strong privacy law here in Minnesota. We do have legislation that we have offered to different legislators in different states. We have it available on our website in our legislative library. So anybody can look in our legislative library and find our patient privacy legislation and give it to their members. But there is one other thing that you can do. We created a consent revocation form, and you can walk into the doctor's office, sign whatever forms you have to sign, and then you can, on your way out, you can hand them the signed revocation form and reverse. Now, in most states, even this isn't going to matter. But again, it's a really good thing to do for the nurses and the doctors who go, what is this? And so you're, revoking any consent, and they can say, well, HIPAA lets me share anyway. Well, okay. But that doesn't mean that we should just lay down and not tell them I revoke all consent. This kind of thing has to start coming into the exam rooms. They have to start feeling the pressure and understanding that we, the people, understand that this is not a safe place. A place where all our confidential information can be shared electronically from one end of the country to the next. And as far as I know, it could even be shared globally with some pharmaceutical company in another country. Who knows?
Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if, in fact, it has been shared globally, given what's been going on in our country that we are aware of since 2020. I like the idea of the consent revocation form because there's a lot of people who would have a difficult time confronting the receptionist or confronting a nurse or even confronting the doctor about any of this. So to simply hand a form that's already signed at the conclusion of signing everything else would be the simplest way to make a statement without causing any kind of consternation in the office itself. So I'm really grateful you have that. On this topic of HIPAA, what would you like to close us out with before we move on to what I also want to speak to you about?
Well, the only thing I guess I would like to say about HIPAA is you've got to tell everybody that you know that HIPAA does not protect your privacy, and that the forms and the statements that they sign about it are a complete ruse and a complete deception to make you calm, to make you think that everything you say in the exam room will be protected. And so now you need to protect yourself, but you also just have to get the public to understand. Tell your friends, tell your colleagues, tell everybody that HIPAA does not protect your privacy, and they can go online at our website. They can buy my book and figure out how this all happened and who did it and why. But, get informed, understand that it's not a safe place, and let people know.
Absolutely. And I will have the information and details about your book on my website with the show notes.
Wonderful.
All right, there's more ahead. This is just the tip of the iceberg for us to be discussing this. So I'll definitely have you back on this topic, but I want to move now, if you will, on to how this whole HIPAA awareness allowed you to become aware of the deception with what's known as the Real ID in the United States. Let's talk about that now. Okay, as I said earlier, we'll talk next week about the United States Real ID system that is actually a federal infringement on state government that establishes illegal surveillance and control of United States citizens, and will also help you know what you can do to reverse any Real ID compliance you may have completed. But back to the HIPAA issue. Think about it. What if you or your child had a medical condition that, if your employer or the school knew about, would limit your advancement? Not because your medical condition actually limits you, but because the perception of others about your condition means they limit you. What if you're seeing a psychologist? Do you want people knowing you are being treated for mental concerns? What if you're being treated for a sexually transmitted disease? Would you want people to know about that? What if you're diagnosed with a type of cancer? First, would you want that information made public? And second, would you want others determining how to react to you on the basis of having that knowledge? How would your employer respond to you if they were aware you were being treated for cancer or maybe awaiting an organ transplant? Would your job and, more importantly, your medical insurance be jeopardized? If you missed last week's podcast, you'll want to hear it along with this week, and make a point of returning next week, where we will explore the United States Real ID Act. HIPAA and the Real ID Act are just two of the many personal liberty endangering controls that exist in the United States, and as I pointed out, other countries have their own versions of digital control. It's all part of the globalist Agenda 2030. Did you see where the governments of France, Australia, Canada, the UK, the European Union, and Germany openly favor a one-world government, which promotes tracking and tracing? I will end this episode with this thought for you to ponder. God, the supreme creator and the sovereign power over all that exists, has not created a system to control the behavior of mankind. Rather, God has created humanity with the ability to choose what they will or will not do, good or bad, right or wrong. As our Creator and our loving Heavenly Father, He knows what is in our best interest, and He has revealed what would allow us to live the best possible life on earth. It is God's desire for us to live the best possible life in freedom. This should make it plain as day where the idea for tracking and tracing and controlling people comes from. We have the choice to succumb to the evil that's in the world, or to take hold of our God-given rights and freedoms, to live on earth according to the desires of our loving Creator. As I said, next week I will continue exploring the egregious behind-the-scenes evil that is taking place with the intentions to control and enslave us through what is known as the Real ID, with my guest Twila Brase. Knowing the truth about such matters so you can protect your family and be aligned with God's promises is why I devote myself to bringing you truth each and every week. Now I ask you to please listen to my closing announcements and to take advantage of the many goods and services I bring you in an effort to at least cover the costs of this podcast. This first announcement clarifies more about the changes to our Greece tour scheduled for April 2026. If you haven't yet signed up to join us, please listen carefully and follow the instructions, because I really want as many of us as possible to be able to meet up in Greece. It may seem far off, but most people make plans for a significant vacation about a year in advance. So if you haven't already expressed interest in traveling with us in April 2026, Now is the time to do so. We want to have about 30 people total because this size group works best for the specific tour I have in mind. We'll be walking the footsteps of the Apostle Paul. I'm using the time between now and October 2025 to determine if we have enough interest, and the trend indicates we definitely should. We have just about 30 people on the list now, but I'd like to have more because when it comes to the actual day of making a commitment, things could have changed, and I want to be able to have at least 30 actually attend the tour. So, if you think you'd like to be part of the Faith to Live By Christian tour with me in Greece during April 2026, now's the time to get your name and number in your party on the list. There's no obligation at this point, you're just expressing your interest. Attendees need to arrange their own air travel to and from the Athens International Airport. To get your name on the list, send an email to faithtoliveby@PamelaChristianMinistries.com with the word Greece in the subject line. In the body of the email, provide your name, contact information, and number of people you expect to be in your party. This will place your name on the interested in attending list, but does not obligate you in any way. It merely assures you have first right of refusal when down payments are due. If you didn't get the details written down that I just shared, simply visit my Beyond the Podcast page using the link in the show notes. If you like what you hear from me with this podcast, I highly recommend my book series, my award-winning blog, and consider signing up for my certificate course in apologetics. My aim with that course is to help people learn how not only to use apologetics to share truth with others, but to help Christian leaders incorporate apologetics into their respective ministries so more Christians are learning how to share their faith. You can learn more by using the link in the show notes. For now, I offer my weekly podcasts, my blog, and bi-monthly e-newsletter at no cost. And certainly I have hard costs associated with doing all I do. If you've been blessed by my work and would like to help my work reach others, why not consider partnering with me? For as little as $10 a month, you can become a partner. Then together we can reach even more people for Jesus. Simply visit my Pamela Christian Ministries homepage and then click on the Give button at the top menu bar. Or if you prefer, you can go directly to the Give page using the link in the show notes. To become a partner, you can use my PayPal or Venmo account, but you will also see other ways you can support my work on that page. Whether you choose to become a monthly partner, give a one-time donation, purchase my books and products from my web store, or support my affiliate sponsors, anything you can do to help me continue this work would be greatly appreciated. And as always, your prayers and telling others about me and my ministry work is much needed. When it comes to my selection of affiliate sponsors, I first look for Christian-owned and operated businesses, and I make a point of personally using the products or services so I can fully endorse them. I seek sponsors that offer products or services you can get via the internet worldwide, and I specifically consider what is common to most people universally. So you'll find health, beauty, and wellness products through Dr. Zelenko's Z-Stack supplements and from QE Strong. Dr. Zelenko's Z-Stack supplements are truly amazing and are available to my listeners for a 5% discount per purchase or a 10% discount for a monthly subscription using the promo code FTLB. You may have heard my interview with Rob Renee about QE Strong. Discover the benefits of quantum energy to overcome all sorts of ailments. Visit QEstrong.com and use the promo code FTLB at checkout to receive your discount. Then my newest affiliate I'm really excited to bring you is Q Streaming. That's CUE Streaming Television. People with United States addresses can get over 3,000 channels, including live TV with streaming television without a contract. Get all of your local networks and favorite movie and sports and pay-per-view channels for about half of what cable costs. See the video promo link in the show notes to learn more. Affiliate sponsors only provide financial support to me when you purchase what they offer. So before you support Amazon or any other retailer, if I offer what you're looking for, please purchase through me. When it comes to special occasions, birthdays, or Christmas gifts, consider my books, jewelry, CDs, and more from my web store or any of the affiliate goods and services I offer. When you purchase from my web store, be sure to use the promo code TRUTH, TRUTH, to receive a 20% discount. Again, you'll find all the links in the show notes. If you like the content and resource material I bring you with this podcast, you'll find much more by connecting with me through my blog. In fact, my blog has been awarded 2 unsolicited awards for Christian content. And I'm also very active on social media. I can cover much more on social media than I can with this weekly podcast. And if you're not already subscribed, please subscribe to my complimentary bi-monthly e-newsletter. I offer encouragement, special offers, and one of my signature recipes with each and every edition. Yep, I'm a foodie and I love to entertain, which is why Faith, Family, Friends, and Food is a bonus segment of my bi-monthly e-newsletter. To receive even more, please be sure to check out my dedicated podcast listeners page, Beyond the Podcast. Here's where we can connect exclusively and you can download complimentary devotionals, resources, and more. On that page, I also ask you to help me learn more about you and what you want by completing the form visible once you scroll down that page. And something that is very easy for you to do and would mean a lot to me is for you to rate, subscribe, or comment on this podcast according to what your preferred listening platform allows. You know how it works. The more likes and subscriptions to this podcast, the more opportunity we have to expand the listening audience. And that means we can reach more people with the gospel message of Jesus while helping people learn how to better apply their Christian faith. I hope you'll join me next week and tell your friends and family to listen right here on Faith to Live By, where we learn how to gain spiritual victory over life's issues. Until next week, I'm Pam Christian, asking you to remember Christ died for us. The least we can do is live for Him.